Welcome to the Enlighten podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Enlighten podcast. I am really happy to be back here with you tonight because I am getting the honor of introducing you to a brand new guest, a fantastic man, and he's got so much wisdom to share with you tonight. Please welcome Matt Gottesman, who is a multidisciplinary, creative, two-time founder, podcaster, writer, artist, and 3.0 web enthusiast. He's an agile digital marketer and strategist by trade, with a background in helping some of the world's most iconic brands like Louis Vuitton Moët Hennessy realize their potential digitally. Nearly a decade ago, he decided to reconstruct his own narrative by taking to the internet to create, build, and publish to the world through his own brands, as well as communicate to the masses at the intersection of culture, creativity, spirituality, and entrepreneurship. He loves business, spirituality, and exploring personal development and human optimization because he believes that all of these help us to become better people, creating more intentional impact in the world. He recently launched Permissionless, a weekly mail drop on Substack, as a way to help people break from the system to expand more on themselves through their collective work, art, and passions, with the goal of bringing more ownership and sovereignty back to the individual. Matt, welcome to the show. I'm happy we're able to do this tonight. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you.
are.
Yeah, no, I got you. I know. I wanted to make sure there's no other sound. Thank you. It's interesting when you sit on the other side of these things and you hear. I now understand how everybody feels, and you hear all of these things. And you're like, oh, okay. Thank you for having me here.
No, thank you. Yeah, you've got an incredible podcast. What was it? Over 6 million downloads.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've been doing that a while.
About 5-6 years now. Yeah.
And what's the name of your podcast for the listeners who are listening here so they can check it out?
It's called The Hustle Sold Separately. Mm-hmm. Like the dream is free, but the hustle sold separately, right? You got to do the work, not hustle and grind culture, just that everything good that you really want for yourself just takes the right, initiative and work and, diving into the details for your passion. And we feature some amazing people from around the world who are willing to talk about the journey over the end success, what they're learning, and just want to humanize creativity and entrepreneurship the whole way.
Yeah, you've had a very interesting journey. What I love about you, and I'm so excited to have you on the show, because one of the messages that I've been trying to get out there to my audience, who's amazing, thank you so much for all of you being here tonight, is to finally not just realize their potential, but to actualize their potential. Mm. And that is something that I can see you're focused on in a lot of different ways by marrying the spiritual component with living life, work, through your work, through your everyday life. So how did everything start for you? You're always that way?
Okay. Again, you and I, we've spoken before and we went on these tears, so I will do my absolute best to streamline it. But and I've said this before, I'm very, very fortunate. I came from two very unique parents where one was a very integrity driven, ethical, moral compass guy. You know, my father was one of the most amazing men to me. And he was a businessman, and he took care of people. But, you know, he was very businessy. And my mom was very holistic, naturopathic. Read this book, you know, at 10, let's do, you know, a rain dance. Let's let's see a shaman. Let's do acupuncture. Let's do Reiki, you know, all these different things. So you can imagine those are two very unique individuals. Everything was supplements and holistic medicine and try to solve, you know, within, right? And so they really leaned on each other, and I was raised that way. And so the spirituality was always there, kind of from a knowing, but it wasn't really integrated more until later on, to about 7-8 years ago, when I went through a massive life transformation. And from a previous life, I think of like just kind of chasing, you know, within work and startups and, you know, statuses and titles and all these things that I didn't realize. I think I was paying too much attention to, not necessarily on purpose, but just because I was just kind of understanding, oh, that's how you prove that you've done the work in life. And that all came to a crashing halt in a case can be made for 2012, but between there and 2014. And I was hurting soulfully. My soul really hurt at the time. I could hear it, you know, like we're not aligned. And that is if anybody's been there before, it can be a scary place, because that's deeper. That's way deeper. It's not like, oh, my ego is hurt. Like your soul is kind of like, hey, we have to have a talk, you know? And essentially everything that I was working for and working with and had done really well in business, relationships with these people, I did right by a lot of people, gone just like that. Looking back, as we spoke about, I think I asked for that because I knew I didn't like professionally anybody around me. And so we ask and God delivers, universe, source, you know, however you want to get into the beautiful universal magic. But what's for us will sometimes remove other things from us, even if, you know, we're attached to them and they don't belong to us anymore, and they don't certainly serve us anymore. If we don't leave willingly and voluntarily, we will be removed from them. And then shortly after that, my marriage ended amicably, but that ended. And I didn't know what to do. So, you know, one of the first things I did is I went to my parents' rabbi. And, you know, culturally we're Jewish, but my mom was always into like, you know, energy work and spiritualities of all kinds of, you know, different nature. And I went to the rabbi and I said, hey, my soul hurts. And he's like, that's a tough one. And that's a really tough one. And
it's not the let's put a Band-Aid on it kind of situation.
Right. And that was, you know, I don't know how far you want me to go on that from there, but like that's really where it started. And
well, don't go and leave out all the details, because it's the details that people love. This is where they get to really relate, and you know, your vulnerability is so key here, because everyone goes through these things, just not everyone talks about it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so before your marriage ended, with the work and the corporations that you were dealing with, or the people within the corporations, different businesses, what was the kind of glaring energy or experience that you were getting that was so out of alignment with who you were in that moment?
Let me give an analogy. Everything everybody is experiencing now and last year through now, and tie it in any bow you want, with media, corporations, businesses, health system, all of it, the behavior, I was dealing with that in 2012 and 2013 and 2014. I like the people, there was just a lot of different kinds of energy. I don't blame any of the people looking back now. There was no emotional, there was a lack of a higher emotional intelligence. In some of those cases, there was a lack of morals and ethics in some of those cases. And I get it. The corporate world is a very previous generations made it what it is, and it's a different, modality. And what I was witnessing is, looking back now, of course, oh wow, there was a lot of worthiness issues from people. There was a lot of value issues. There was a lot of projecting. There was a lot of scarcity mindset, fear mindset. I'll be found out that I shouldn't be working this job. You're fired. There's, it doesn't come out like that. I had to unravel to take a bigger look at the bigger picture to really see what was actually happening. Like, why, if I was being so collaborative and I didn't want any of the credit, it didn't matter to me, and I just wanted to do a good job. Like, I thought, from the naivete, I guess, of it, I thought, oh, like, this is just kind of what you do. Like, this is just natural. I hadn't taken into consideration yet that humans will be humans, will be humans, will be humans. And I say that all the time, meaning that if we don't have boundaries, if we don't have the conversation, if we don't communicate, good or bad, if we don't have very, specific talks and relationships with people, and if they're not healthy, you got to go. See, but back then I didn't understand that. And so I would work harder and prove harder and, be even more loyal, like the way you may be in like a bad relationship, right? When you're a teenager or any age, really, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's like going back for more. I just didn't understand what was happening at an emotional level for a lot of people until later on. And so if I looked at it looking in, they just were coming from a whole different way of not have done certain work inside, at least the environments that I was around, in my opinion. Some of them, even before that, I learned amazing things, like from Louis Vuitton Moët Hennessy, like the greatest. I loved working for them. They were the most, I was able to get contrast working with them. They were very passionate and detailed and, speak your truth and, what are your feelings? What are your, emotions about this? And, do what you love and, and bring that to us so we can all thrive. Like, it was just a way different. I loved it. Maybe because they're a very old brand that houses very old brands. And then after that, there were just a lot of different, people I was just doing that. I don't blame any of them, because I was the common denominator and I didn't certainly know enough about how to have boundaries, how to have certain talks, how to do all these different things that probably could have not only made it better, but maybe even helped differently, right? Helped them in the process.
Yeah, sure. It's like, you show up differently. Other people are now forced to either show up differently or it starts to fall apart.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah.
Okay. So so the corporate world, for the most part, was just not honoring a system of I guess, values, ethics, like just from the human moral compass, being a good person, treating people kindly, wasn't exactly shaping up. So when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that you had two big surrender moments.
Yeah.
So let's go into the first one.
The first one led to the second one. The first one, I was coming home from Europe with my parents and pretty much heading into divorce. And I remember my father, and I like telling the story, one, because I love and honor him. He passed 2 years ago. And two, it was a very life-defining moment for me. But I remember he looked at me and was like, I love you. And I'm like, this is going to be interesting. Not that he never said, I love you. I mean, he did on occasion, but not like that. And not like often. I don't know. But he was a very loving father who did lots of loving things. But when he started with an address of, I love you, like something is going to come after that. And he was like, I love you.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. He was like, he's like, I think you're going to have to really make some hardline decisions about your life. And I think you're out of time for how you've been doing things. And I think you better start running your race immediately. And it stuck with me because it was a gut check in my stomach that to this day I feel it. Like, it's like when you put your hands, your face in your hands, because you're like, that's a very real thing to say. And he was very, very right. And so that left me feeling like I better change everything immediately and figure it out, and so so that led to the second profound moment, which was I went to go see this rabbi, and that's what I said. Like, he was like, what's going on? And I said, so my soul hurts. And he was just like, looked at me, he was like, yeah, that can happen. I'm like, I don't know what to do about it. I was like, because I feel like the way I was seeing things doesn't make sense anymore. And I don't know what that means, but I'm willing to learn. But I don't even know where to begin. And I was saying, I'm heading into divorce. All of this stuff happened. And I don't even want to blame anybody. Whereas I felt like old me, maybe if I was like when I was in my 20s, because I was in my early 30s, early to mid 30s, I was like, old me might have wanted to blame people. I'm like, I just want to figure out, how did I make these decisions that got me here? Like, there's got to be something bigger going on that I'm not aware of. And so he said, okay, well, first of all, I know you don't live here in town, so I'm going to refer you to a couple people up there in Scottsdale and Phoenix. But everything is about your journey with your soul, which starts with your character. Who are you? And what do you really stand for? And what do you really want? Who are you as a man? Who are you as an individual to a partner, if you ever want one again, which I very much was like, yeah, no, I do. And at the time I was a little skittish, but about that. And he's like, who are you in relation to a partner? And who are you in relation to the community and the world at large? How are you showing up in life? And how are you making choices from a very high intuitive state, from a knowing, versus simply, oh, I want this now. Instant gratification. Oh, I need this, to validate me. Oh, I need this to prove myself, or any number of million of things we all get trapped into. And by the way, it's a lot of practice. And I still constantly practice it. But he was just really checking me hard. And so he sent me to somebody up here. And I was talking to this other rabbi, and he goes, okay. He's like, forget religion just for a minute. He's like, let's just talk spirituality. He's like, and he went right into the same thing. He's like, do you know who you are? And I'm like, I thought I did. I was like, I thought I did. I was like, yeah. I thought I had this whole thing mapped out. I'm like, on paper, I looked really good. And I actually thought I felt pretty good, which was also partially a lie, I think, because I was really dealing with a lot of stuff,
Oh, it's amazing.
Right?
The illusions the ego has us believing. Yeah.
Right. And so, and that started a journey between rabbis and then reaching out to like shamans and spiritual community, and learning about metaphysics and quantum mechanics, to learning about, all ancient philosophies and Stoicism, to learning about Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, Judaism. I just wanted to basically understand the universe at large, spiritual healers, energy healers, right? The works from here to Brazil and back again, like everywhere. And yeah, so those were the two profound, moments, because one led to the other led to my life.
So that's I love that. That's amazing. And I think it's incredible that you had two rabbis who really kind of broke it down, even into an esoteric level, like taking it really deep. Like, do you even know yourself enough to trust that inner knowing that is guiding you? because not a lot of people acknowledge how important that part is, because that's your connection to God, the universe, source, whatever you call it, like without that, you're just a wandering, I don't even know, I don't want to say a defective compass, but you're definitely got some shakiness in there.
Right.
So I love that you were able to even just have that beautiful blessing come into your life where you had two people who had just a really expanded viewpoint that would allow you to explore so much. So you go on this journey of exploration and researching and learning all of this new stuff. How did you then take all of that information and funnel it into what you're doing today? Because that is where a lot of blocks come up for many people.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the internet, I didn't know what to do. And I was like, I'm going to journal this. I'm going to talk about this online. I can't be the only one experiencing this. And it's not fair. It's not fair that media goes and shows this whole other perfect world, especially since, coming from more of the entrepreneurial side. Oh, forget it. Are you kidding me? Oh, they had $100 million acquisition. Now you're good enough to be featured on Forbes. Now you can be on TV. Now you're validated. And people didn't even realize, by the way, you might sell a company, you may sell it for this, but you may take that and whatever. It doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is that I was like, no one is talking about the journey as much as I'd like to see more online. I better put my money where my mouth is. And so my whole background's digital. So it was twofold. One, I was like, I want to have this conversation online. And second was, I'm going to build my own distribution, just like Joe Rogan, because I know that I was teaching all these businesses about, audience, long game, but I wasn't building it myself. And when you're not building it yourself, it's sort of like, well, how do you know? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to show them. And I'm going to create my own audience. And we're going to have some serious conversations. And so I did, starting off with HDF magazine, Hustle and Deal Flow, HDF magazine on Insta. And it was before the algorithm changed and the thing just took off. I was like, the way probably everybody feels with TikTok now. I totally get the dopamine hits that they're going through right now. I just laugh because I'm like, it'll slow down at some point, and you'll also realize that they're going to suppress your information. But but I was very fortunate. I grew that. And I took to the internet because I wanted to have conversations about the reality of entrepreneurship. What do we deal with our ego, with our mental wellness, our expectations, our outcomes, what happens when they don't happen, relationships, our health, our mindset, everything. And it was very interesting. So it was very wide in the sense of, I wanted it to be life. Why aren't we talking about life as a whole and complete? Everybody's niching into this one thing, which I get. I totally get that. But we're more than one thing. And the world compartmentalizes us into oh, you're a banker, you're an entrepreneur, you're a digital marketer, you're a doctor. No, I highly disagree with that. We are way more than one thing, and we are certainly way more than society's title on us, or a status, or whatever school gave us those letters behind our name, and all of that stuff. We're way more, or how much money this person has or that person has or whatever. We're way more than those things. And how many of us are living really in the things that we are here to do?
And that's key.
Yeah. And that's everything. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to have those conversations, and then that grew online. And then they were like, do a podcast. I'm like, I'm not going to do a podcast. Do a podcast. And then I was like, I'm going to do a podcast. And I bet there are other people who everybody might worship and idolize. I'm going to bring them on, and I'm going to get in their head as well, in their heart, and find out what they're going through in the same vein of building something that they believe in. And what are they learning along the way? Because I wanted to humanize the journey. I wanted people who would listen on the podcast and be like, oh, wow, they go through the same things. Yeah, no shit, they go through the same things. They're dealing with the same stuff ish, different, but same. And I wanted people to feel more connected, that they can look at other people who, whether they're building a name for themselves or might be a little bit more visible, to be like, oh, I'm just like them. Or, oh, is it interesting where they're struggling in their business? I actually can fulfill that as an audience member. I'm like, oh, I'm a techie. I see where they're they're losing out on, and like I can help them. It just made my audience feel more like less alone and more, okay, I'm not the only one going through this stuff. And I wanted to have very deep conversations that are happening at an intuitive level. Where is the soul really guiding us? And I love the idea of spirituality and business kind of like coming through, because one, entrepreneurship is the fastest way to personal development. If you weren't doing it before, you're going to.
Oh yeah, I can attest to that.
Right? You're going to challenge everything, and you're like, am I the problem? Like, you know what I mean? Like you have to look at yourself constantly under the microscope, which you have to have balance and grace with yourself for that too. But you'll find yourself a lot of times looking at every situation. What am I in relationship to the people I'm affecting? Who am I in relationship to how this, back to what the rabbi said, who am I in relationship to everything I'm doing? And why am I even doing these things to begin with? What does it even mean? What is it in relation? Is this what I even really want to be doing? Right. And so we have to constantly keep digging deeper. And I was just constantly learning, oh, I get it. I'm the process. The process, like, they say embrace the process. And I used to get so ticked off by that, because I'm like, yeah, I understand, until I really understood, I'm like, I'm the process. I have to get to know me, like, to get through to where I'm going. There's no other way. I have to be like, well, why do you do things that way? And what don't you know in that? And what do you now have to do the work and learn on that? And, are you eating appropriately that nurtures the mind and the body? Okay, now I got to learn nutrition. Now I got to learn finances, bookkeeping, taxation. Now I got to learn, like, who am I? What are my triggers, and how am I developing myself as a man and making better choices that creates a secure foundation for a woman to feel safe and secure, not materialism secure, but secure as, like, I like the way he's making decisions. He's directional. He's clear. He's honest. He cannot be easily bought or sold or manipulated. He knows who he is, and he can't be coerced, right? I can't, all grounding in all of the way I make decisions. So I realized, oh, that's like the kind of environment and foundation I need to create. I need to become those things. And when we become those things, you're going to attract those things. Everybody throws that around all the time, like, oh, you have to just be it. And that's also true, but, it gets frustrating when people say it and you're like, but how? There really isn't, like, there isn't a blueprint, and that's said all the time. It's literally like, how am I making decisions? How are these outcomes constantly happening? And if I want the outcome to change, what would I change next time I do it? What, and am I taking things personally? Yeah, there were a lot of times I was taking things personally. Why? Where does that even come from? Is that coming from this lifetime? Is that coming from something maybe my soul carried from a previous lifetime? Like, now we're in, like, past life regression. Like, I went that route. Why am I making decisions a certain way? And why was I taking things personally at times, or interpreting things a certain way? And the more I grounded myself, the less personal I was taking things. And it was fascinating to watch and observe. And there's a really, I have to reference this because it was so simple but profound, and it was Bruce Lee, and it was an old interview, and he was saying, whether you're being attacked physically, because he was martial arts, or he's like, same could be applied to verbally, do not instantly react. When the projection comes, who are you in relation to the projection before you even respond? Feel whatever it is you feel, all, like, inside of you. Just be like, what am I feeling right now? Like, and if you can practice it enough, he said, you'll start to cut down the amount of time before you respond. And eventually you're going to see them coming before they even ever do it. And I was like, that's cool. Like, how do you get so far ahead of the person? Like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
expect you to
I love that. Oh my God, you just dropped so many good things right there, and that I was like, okay, first of all, love that, because knowing who you are allows you to be in total control of your response, not your reaction. And I think that's where a lot of us are being guided to right now. We're being tested in a lot of ways through everything that's going on in our world. But I also love how much you said, I am the process, and I need to embrace myself. I need to embrace this process. What is this process? Who am I? Because what we're seeing right now is a total collapse of all the systems globally. Every single system is collapsing right now. And the reason why it's collapsing is because of the awakening, the shift in consciousness that's happening across the planet, where everyone's starting to realize this isn't working for me anymore. And so we're seeing it projected into our reality on this macro scale, while micro, on this micro level within us, everything's falling apart for good reason, because it's just not working. So like for you, what systems within you kind of collapsed, and what kind of was birthed through that?
Wow. That's a new one that I've been asked. I like that. And then by the way, also, I love that you said the micro and the macro. Everything that's actually happening in the macro is very much because as a result of how we're behaving in our micro, and we don't even realize it. So if we can pin that, I'd love to come back to that. But the systems in me were, I would say, was a little bit of, I was taking things, well, okay. Some of it was naivete, right? I was naive in a lot of ways. I didn't have boundaries. So I was naive because I was a giver. I was an overgiver. And I naturally operated thinking, this is a big one. This is a huge one I'm about to say. This is exactly what is happening at the macro level right now. I operated thinking that everybody was behaving with the same moral compass as me. I operated thinking that everybody meant the best intentions for me. I operated thinking that everything was always like, just innately good. Now, this is not a negative thing. Most people are actually innately good. What happens is, and I say this a lot, is I had to realize humans are humans are humans are humans. If we are relying on everybody else all the time for anything and everything, we end up with disappointment, right? We end up with outcomes and expectations that weren't met, because we're hoping others will show up the way we want to show up for our specific things. That is not life. Why? Because they have a life, because they are trying to make decisions, and they are trying to figure out who the hell they are, and they're unsure, and they've got a million things going on in their world. And so that was probably the biggest system is like reliance. And I was like, oh my God, it's self-reliant. I need to rely on myself. And when we build that self-reliance and we're relying less on everybody else. Now, I'm not saying don't have, because I have a tight circle. I have complementary players all around me, but they're also building their life. They're a bonus, and they keep me balanced, and they check me. They're not going to just agree with me. They check me. What role did you play in this? Right? And so your circle is everything. And I had to get into such a more self-reliant state that what started to happen is I had less expectations and outcomes expectations in general of what other people might do. And I remember last year when I was doing Zooms just to help people out that were when we first, shut down. And a gal asked me, she said, people always surprise me. I was like, they never surprise me. And she's like, how? They're always doing something you don't expect. I'm like, that's why I'm never surprised. They're always doing something like expected, the unexpected, always. They're going to do whatever is innately good for them in that particular situation. All people, from the micro level all the way to the macro level, whether you agree with their ethics or morals or lack thereof, right? And if we expect less of them to show up a specific way for little old me, for me, I don't mean to say it like that, but I mean like in the grand scheme of 7-8 billion people, then we are less agitated when they don't show up. Like, I expect people to make whatever decision that they need to in that particular, they're going to put their family over me first all day long. They're going to put their circle over me all day long first. Right. So self-reliance was the biggest system I had to like reboot. One of the biggest systems I had to reboot. I had to really take out that naiveness or naivete, however you say it, of like expecting other people to innately be always giving the same way I wanted to give, understanding things the way I wanted to understand them, doing things the way I wanted to do them. And that's going to have that changes everything in your business and your relationships, right? In your partnership, right? Like you expect less of your partner to fulfill the things that you have to kind of do yourself. And now I'd be more contributory versus, right?
Yeah.
So.
It's like you're inspiring one another to show up to the table already full. Like it's like, like you're not coming there looking to say, oh, I'm going to take something from your plate and you can take something from my plate. It's like you're already coming satiated, you're already coming full, and everything else is just bonus. And that allows you to enjoy it because it's bonus, and I think a lot of people who've come into this lifetime, that are here on this planet at this time, who really are empathic and are honoring some of that intuitive nature that you were guided by your rabbis earlier to be more in tune with, are very much overgivers, and have this kind of blueprint within that understands that everyone's wants better for everyone else. I want good for you, so you must want good for me. And that, I think, comes from a higher level of awareness that I think we come in from a soul level that we don't always realize doesn't exactly manifest in this reality with everyone. And it does that for a specific reason of teaching us the boundaries of knowing how much you should be giving and how much you should be giving to yourself versus other people, preserving your energy for taking care of yourself. Because at the end of the day, look at what we're dealing with in our world. We're dealing with a society part of a society through media and other talking heads, politicians, tech companies are trying to make us all codependent on one another. Yeah. I am responsible for you. You are responsible for me. And it is the absolute backwards truth of all this is. I mean, just even looking with, the health implications that we're all being faced in the last 18 months. Oh, if I do this for you, then you're doing this for me. And then we're all taking care of each other. That's not how it works.
Right. I think why I was prepped before 2020 is first, growing up with the internet since AOL days, I saw like the progression of how the internet was used, right, throughout the years. So that was like one thing I think, and then understanding media. Once I was in media myself, like doing all this stuff online, and then like people started pitching me like, hey, you want to get in Forbes for $5,000? I'm like, no. I'm like, is that a thing? And then you start to realize, I'm like, oh shit, the whole fucking system is rigged.
Rigged. Rigged. Everything you think is coming in on pure talent, it's coming in under a rigged system.
So anybody listening, your favorite people online. So all my stuff actually was organic. I actually just got asked. So it's not always that way. But a lot of stuff that everybody thinks that you're seeing online was like, who paid who slipped into this publication, who got here. Advertorials is what they're called. Advertorials. Oh, you want to be featured in this magazine? It's $10,000 and we'll do a whole story on you with all the photographs and everything. Sound good? Like stuff like that. So it's a facade. So there was that side. My father ends up in the hospital 5-6 years ago, the first time, and it was really the only other time he was in the hospital. And then 2 years ago before he passed, different things, which was interesting. So just the breakdown of the health system. 6 years ago, this man goes into the hospital. You have prostate cancer. You're dying in 4 months. You better get everything in order. My mother and my father were like, okay, whatever you say, doc. My mom was like, you're going home. I'm putting you on a regimen. This is what we're going to eat. This is what we're going to do. And you're going to pray and do spirituality every single day, period. And he's like, let's do it. That was it. Came back 6 months later. What did you do? It shrunk to like almost nothing. How'd you get rid of it? You mean to tell me that the doctors, the specialists, couldn't figure out their regimen? By the way, this is great. Their regimen not only was hardcore chemo, which I get in some cases might be needed. My mother had to deal with that a little bit later on, but and was fine now. But all this stuff, he got a little bit of radiation. When we went to take him to get the treatment, in the room before you walk in to get treatment at the hospital were tables and tables of cookies and cakes and like candy and everything. Why? Well, if you're dying, we might as well give you, you know, your last like meals and all that stuff. Sugar accelerates cancer.
Oh my God.
I was just like, where am I? Am I like, what? This is the Twilight Zone. This cannot be real. Now that was 2016. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm like using rational behavior, still kind of learning the system. I'm like, this is weird. 6 months later, he starts curing. My mom was like, sure, you kind of just agreeing with the doctors because this is how it is. And I was married to a doctor, so I also understand like how things can change, and sometimes they can go very black and white or, whatever. And that's okay. So I noticed that, okay, that seemed weird. And then years later, when he ended up back in the hospital for a very standard procedure, which, by the way, everybody, he didn't make it out of the hospital. This is in 2019. So I was long prepped for 2020. like my father passed, my uncle passed. One of my close friends who I mentored was shot twice in the chest. And I'm like, what a 2019. And so that was a random freak accident. But anyways, when he was in the hospital, my father was in the hospital again for a heart procedure. They didn't always know what they were doing. They were poking and prodding. And they're like, they would do something and then he would be back in the hospital. And they're like, oh yeah, that doesn't go well with that prescription. I'm like, shouldn't you have known that? And they're like, well, we're still trying to figure out the problem. I'm like, aha. So you don't know what's necessarily going on. Fascinating. All right. The nurses would hear my best friend on the phone with me, who's like an international energy healer and a medium and all this stuff. And we were just talking and the nurses would be like, hey, like, is she a medium? I'm like, yeah, of like the highest extent, which, I intro you to. And the nurse would be like, can you help me? The nurses. I coached 3 of them while I was in the hospital because they were so negative and they were around such toxicity. Doctor walks by, ready for a smoke break, eating a Hostess cupcake.
Oh my God, I can't even believe those things still exist.
I didn't even think they did. And I'm like, oh, I get it. Wow. What did I learn in the business world? What did I learn in the health world? Right? What did I learn in the media world? You're going to have all kinds of actors in both, good players and not so good players. Moral compass, what's leading? And the system, as you were mentioning, breaking down because it's not sustainable, but it's been going on. It's been being built. A case could be made for about 100 to 120 plus years. A case could be made for 1913, but that's for you guys all to go maybe back and do some research. And then a little bit before that, maybe in the 1920s. So the system has been intertwined where it's been woven in with also a certain character type along the way, right? Starting back in the industrial age and being fully developed all the way to where we are now. Now, it took me getting more spiritual to remove myself, right? Like take off the layers essentially and be like, just take off all these layers that we don't even realize like we're carrying. And we're like, what am I missing? And that's why I want, like, when I think about everybody on the macro level, and I gave this example on the micro level the other day, I'm like, anybody ever have like a really great loved one, family member, or maybe when they dated that like really made a bad mistake and they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, so out of character, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, they were your family member. But let me guess, government and the healthcare system and all these people at this macro level, you're the most important person in the world, right? And I was telling people, I'm like, it's important to understand that because if your loved one in the micro can make a mistake and they are close to you, what about the people who are not close to you in the macro? Is it possible that there could be a lack of moral behavior going on that may not serve you. And if you're not self-reliant and understanding a little bit more about how you were made up spiritually, emotionally, right, and all these other things that could drastically affect you. And so when everybody was going through everything last year, I'm like, oh yeah, that was my 2012. I totally get how you guys are going. What's going on with you guys? And there's like, how'd you do it? I'm like, where do you want to begin?
Yeah. Well, you brought up a good point there. And the reason why I think people they disassociate their micro and their macro is because the macro is used as an authority over the micro. And so people are just giving their authority away to these systems, these organizations, because they believe they have been put in place. They're being paid extremely big amounts of money. They must know much more than what I know, and they must know what's better for me than what I know. And so I'm not even going to bother critically thinking about anything or cause questions. And it all comes down to personal authority, giving your own sovereignty away around all of that.
Right. You cannot escape the work. Your soul is here. It's different for every single person. Your soul is here to elevate. So we're faced a lot of times, not going on the spiritual, we're faced a lot of times with contrast, with things we don't like, with just signals that help us go, oh, wait a minute. Like the simplest way I can break it down is like, you ever see something you don't like it's so the opposite of who you really are? Yeah. So you can appreciate who you really are, not take on that thing. So you can go, oh, I'm actually really this. Let me honor that. Let me respect it. And then when we understand that relationship with that lesson is over and we move and we accelerate and ascend and ascend and ascend. And our soul, I believe our souls are traveling, some of them are very old, thousands of years old, and they've done this dance. You ever wonder why some things you just innately know out of nowhere? Where did that, it was just a gift or a talent, like without you even having any formal training in it? Where does that come from? And so I believe we're traveling, and as we travel, we're here to just keep that sovereignty to make choices that help the soul ascend, right? So we want to do good. We want to be of purpose. We want to be challenged, which I know is very difficult. By the way, I still get challenged all the time. There's the quote, it doesn't get easier, you just get better, right? Which is just kind of like, you start to learn how to move more fluidly. Because the moment, I'll give you an example. And I was told on a spiritual retreat earlier this year, soul always knows what you need. Soul always knows what you need. So imagine next time you are faced with something you don't like, ask yourself, did I put you there? Did I put you, human, there? Did I put you, situation, there? Did my soul put you there? Are you training me right now? If you can remove yourself from reacting so fast and be like, I put that there. What is this teaching me? Something's going on.
Co-creator
right?
Of your reality.
Co-creation.
Well, this is fantastic. So I think this is a great segue into your mushroom experience. Because I want to go into what was revealed to you through your experience with mushrooms. The mushroom tea, right? You had this mushroom tea. Yeah.
So, wow, your audience, by the way, you guys, so I have my @ Gottesman, and I talk about all of this stuff. I have not actually spoken that much about the tea.
What? Are you serious?
I mean, publicly. So you guys, I'm happy to share it. Just
this is the audience to share it with.
you're getting the exclusive on this. So I hadn't had mushrooms since I was 20, 21, 20. And I said, I thought I'd never really do it again. And a very close friend of mine wanted me to, not wanted me, he was just, he was telling me about this Johns Hopkins study for drinking mushroom tea. And there's a whole protocol for it. You spend a month preparing for it. What's your intention? You research articles throughout the whole month, journal about it. You're constantly learning about it. You do an ice bath at least once a week for 3.5 minutes to learn breath, right? Because breath is so important. There's especially where there's breath, there's life. Breath work is very important because in any given, whether you're stressed or something's about to attack you or whatever, you immediately go into breath, and you can regulate your system right away. It will ground you immediately, right? Even in stressful situations. So you do that all month, and then it's a 6-hour ride, if you will. And you start at 6:30 in the morning, and he's like, you'll finish by 12:30. I'm like, you don't know me. I'll probably like be going until like Tuesday, and he's like, you're fine. 6 hours. And you listen, there's like a lot of classical music, Chopin and like, Mozart and Beethoven and, all these amazing composers for different times. You're supposed to be listening to it. And my friend who administered this, he's just there to journal all 6 hours and guide me. So I thought, let's do it. I was like, I'm curious. I want to go, I firmly believe, by the way, anything you want to achieve, like people talk about ayahuasca journeys, you get, and I know all the different groups, people online talking about all these different things, and they're doing this and they're doing that sacred thing and all this stuff. You actually can achieve it completely sober through breath work. Achieving godlike state.
Oh yeah.
You can achieve through breath work, hands down. This, so I actually advocate for that, because have access to something that you can do at any time, not just like you have to like put yourself into a trippy state. But
what's interesting really quickly is what people don't realize, that when they go, there's nothing wrong with using plant medicines. It's part of the journey. Some people need that catalyst, but what people realize, what the whole goal of plant medicine is to show you what you can achieve on your own. And you want to be able to create whatever it is that the medicine is gifting you through the DMT production of your own breath, because that's the lungs is where you produce the most DMT. So allowing you to have those visions and everything. So really and truly, the plant medicine is almost like a guide to show you what you're capable of, and to then not become dependent on it, but to then, fly out of the nest yourself and start creating.
Oh, I flew out of the nest. Essentially what, the way the tea was made was very like the actual Johns Hopkins way, which is you remove any of this sediments that will make you nauseous. It's straight just for the psilocybin, the things that, of the plant medicine that are most, for going in, et cetera. And with cacao and honeycomb and all that. And so, I, about 5 minutes in, was like, okay, and the profound experience that I had was wild, was absolutely wild. I know everybody has a different journey, if you will. For me, first I went outside, and it's dead of winter. It's like the middle of December. And it's like 6:30 in the morning. Even though I live in a desert, doesn't matter. It's like freezing outside in the morning. It's a true desert, and I'm freezing. And I was like, can I go inside? Like, I think I just need to use a bathtub. And my buddy was like, no. He's like, cause that won't really help. You're not cold. Like, you're just in a cold place. And I was like, oh shit, and then like he wrapped this up. He's like, here, take this, he wrapped it around me. And I was like, it felt very like, it's funny. I felt very royal all of a sudden. And then I go inside, and out of nowhere, it all just downloaded completely. And the profound experience that I had, like I felt like with my hand down into like, like into my hands like this on the countertop. And I basically, two profound things happened at that point, which was, the first one was, I have been building online and holding space for hundreds of thousands, millions of people. And I've been taking all that on, to want to take the world on. And I was carrying, and I felt the responsibility of that. And we're not here to take everybody on. We can definitely inspire and we can influence, but we cannot take everybody on. But we can definitely be like, you can come with, right? And the second thing that came after that was, this was wild. I basically saw the souls of every interaction of every person I encountered throughout my whole life. Why is this important? The soul is light. The earth version can be anywhere from your best friend to a giant asshole. But at the soul level, they're all serving you. And I saw how their soul was like, I'm playing a role for you. Like I didn't, like a soul contract. I'm not like, yeah, in an earthly way, I sound this way to you, or I'm firing you, or I'm this you, or whatever. But like at the soul level, I'm here to have this experience with you to help. And it was so insane to have this feeling of like, what if we really are all just walking each other home? And I saw the relationships I had with all of these people who were like, you know, I'm trying, like, you know, just, I saw the relationship. I saw what they were in relation to me. And it was a very, I won't go on a complete tear, but it was very fascinating, because I would even see, even at lower level interactions, where I was like, oh, wow, they're all reminding me of who, like, to get home. They're all reminding me of like what I came here for. And it was so like, I started connecting the real world interactions, even like those 5-minute weird interactions with people. I was like, oh shit. They were purposely put there. And then I was like going back and forth between like, did I put that there? You know, and you start to think about the grand universal plan. It was it was insane. And so it's funny to actually talk about it out loud to a public audience.
No, that's amazing. Because
Yeah.
I mean, you were literally just shown the blueprint of purpose for humanity, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how it works. And it's just, oh, okay. So many things here. I loved how you said, is everyone just here to show each other home, how to get home? Yeah. You know, when I was 31, I did a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And I had the most profound experience in a 2-hour period on the 4th day that my audience is very familiar with. But basically, I came out of my body. I experienced myself as simply energy. No time and space. What felt like 10 minutes was 2 hours. And when I finally came back in my body, when I came back in, I just started bawling my eyes out, like just heaving tears. And I couldn't understand why I was crying, because it was such an incredible experience to feel not high bliss, but complete acceptance and contentment with how I was in that moment. I didn't want to change anything. I didn't want to remove anything. I didn't want to add anything. Everything was perfect exactly how it was. And I realized later on, I was like, why was I crying? And it wasn't until like the 10th day of, like, you know, when we finally came out and we were able to talk, that I realized I came home. I came home in that moment. And I understood what it felt like to be home. And all of us are finding our way through these experiences, both good and bad, however you want to perceive this is the world of duality here, the experience that you're having, to, you know, collect all the parts we've discarded about ourselves because we didn't think we were good enough. We didn't think they were useful. They were too painful, whatever they were, and bring them all back home into union, into unity, so that we feel whole again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly, it's so well put. The only thing I kept saying out loud was, I'm like, oh my God, I have so much respect for them. Like, it was like, I was repeating it over and over again. I was like, so the respect was just coming, like, it was just, I was like, oh my God, so much love, like so much love. I was like, that person got out of the way for me at the same, like, without even wanting to, just because they're so new to help me, even though they would have rather kept me, you know, in their world in that role. But they were like, you know, and I'm thinking of like even a good person, like a best friend or something like that, you know, where it's like, you know, wow, they're wanting, actually, like, their soul's wanting something greater for me. And then, so there was this respect thing, and the duality was, and I was warned about this. Sorry if you guys can hear my dog. The duality was that I was told, you're going to have an experience where at one point you will be up here and your body will be here. And I didn't know what that meant when he first told me. And then I realized what it was when the spirit, the soul, takes away from the physical body, it's like getting rid of all of the the stuff that, like, the layers of the stuff that has kind of come into us, the energy and the toxicity and the stress and the things that
residue
also,
and
all the residue, things that make disease, things that make problems in us, all this stuff. And imagine, like, it's breaking down to like pull apart. And I remember at that point, I was like, everything is exactly as it should be. And I remember he looked at me and I'm like, what the hell is happening? And he's like, and he's sober, by the way. And he's just like, dude, you are glowing. It's like, I was like, this isn't just me, right? He's like, no, he's like, this room is like, there's something wild. And then I remember at one point I was reading his mind, and this is like not made. It was the craziest thing, because I'd be like, I would say something and it was what he was just thinking. I'm like, but I knew you were going to say that. He's like, yeah. I'm like, because I put that there. He's like, pretty much. And so we're having this like dialogue at times without him even talking. And I'm like, how am I able to do that? I was like, never mind. I know how I'm able to do that because I told you to do that. And so I'm like realizing how much we're creating all the time, basically. And I think another profound moment was, there was this key woman figure who was, probably like divine partner, if you really will. Right. And she was like, do you get it? Do you get it? Like, do you get the relationship of everybody? Do you understand? Like, go back through it. Thank every single person. Thank them. You don't even thank them. And I was just like, how did you know? And she's like, you knew. I was like, that's true. I was like, but how did you know? She's like, because I know you, you knew me. Like, yeah. I was already, basically it was like a guide. Like, I know you. That's how I knew what you needed. You knew what you needed. I was put here by you to know what you would need as well. Everything was, you put it all there to get here. That's how you return home. And it was very interesting because I realized the role we are constantly creating when we're very conscientious of the people we're around, how we're behaving, what are we really gathering from them, what good or bad, if what they're saying in a physical sense, but what are they teaching us? What are they really wanting for us? What is their soul really wanting for us? What is it? How is it meant to drive us home? Right. And so that was really interesting. And it was just so remarkable how removed from the ego you get at that point, where you're like, wow, I'm only making shit up in a human mind that wouldn't have existed unless I thought of it here, when reality is way different. And we know this to be true because look at how the world is behaving right now, because it was created out of this earthly way versus, a more kind of in tune, the people at the top pulling the strings. If they were a little bit more in tune, I almost, not that I would like to be, but you can imagine being in a room with them, be like, y'all all right? Like, what is it with you guys? Like in terms of like mass chaos and destruction. And isn't it interesting because what they really represent, scarcity, right? With all the money in the world, scarcity. With all the control in the world, fear, right? With all of the pulling of the strings everywhere, like putting sides against sides, right? Think about that. Fear and scarcity and like, no, all mine. And if I let the world go, they'll destroy it and I'll never it's like, they're so far removed from self and making sure everybody else is too.
Oh, absolutely. It's the biggest illusion of all, and people buy into it. People buy into the illusion, and that's why it works. But a lot of people aren't buying into it anymore, and you can see that because of that shift in consciousness. And, speaking of, I think that when we think about our future, what I would love for you to share with the audience is your interactions with like Gen Zs, and what they're perceiving of the world, because I think that, we're going to be experiencing a lot of changes coming up, but I think that we're going to have to learn new ways of understanding these changes. And I think Gen Z is going to be doing things a little bit differently. And I don't think they're as in agreement as I think those who are controlling everything think they are.
Amen. I think we spoke a little bit about that. I've been fortunate enough to speak to some decent sized groups of Gen Zs. First of all, at least the ones that I was around, not all, the ones that I was around, not buying it. They are so gifted so in tune that they're just like, something's not right. Not only are they like, something's not right, but, you know, and I think it started with millennials, you know, and then moved right into like further solidified in Gen Z of like, you all created this chaos. Boomers on up. Sorry if there's any boomers listening, on up. X could probably be like lumped in there a little bit. You all created the, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's great people in each generation, and there's lazy people in every generation. But and that chaos doesn't resonate with us. It doesn't make any sense. Why would I want to go do this job when you hate it and you're stressed? Why would I want to do this with my health when you're unhealthy? Why would I want to do this with money when you consume everything and you're not happy? Why would I want to do this with a house when you like only live in the house, but you never go anywhere and experience anything? They're watching and everything. And not only that, are they coming in way more advanced souls? And then on top of that, like I spent sorry if my dog keeps like crying over it's that time, but they you know, they're coming in so technologically advanced. Luckily, because I'm just a techie, I'm in these discords with them related to blockchain and crypto. Their computation and complex mathematics made simple, and how they can kind of like understand multiple layers, Earth to like metaverse, which metaverse is more like, you know, the virtual reality space, not for the shit that's controlling, more for like, you know, how can you interact with each other the way we do through Instagram DM. In a metaverse where you can actually see each other's avatar. I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going, Johnny? You know, hey, Nicole, how's it going? They're just so multidimensional. And, you know, I believe, you know, they came in really to eventually take over what is sinking, you know, and a couple, you know, one Gen Zer asked me in front of this group of kids, they were like 15 to 26. And one of them asked me, you know, is there hope? And I said, absolutely. Like light always wins. Light always wins. It never like, I was like, tell me a time that dark won. Maybe in the short term, but tell me a time dark won. Like it hasn't. Like every dark action throughout history has ended in a result of oblivion. And when you brought it up earlier about the system like unfolding, I said, guys, like it's the Titanic. On the outside, it's so magnificent and beautiful, but on the inside, it's sinking. And what do we know about resistance? You know, it doesn't necessarily go without a fight. What do we know about our own? If we're doing our own work, it doesn't go without a fight. They're not going without a fight, but it's breaking down. It really is breaking down. And these Gen Zers know it, and they're trying to manage two, you know, worlds. The, you know, the coming down of the old and the building of the new. And so they're at this like interesting kind of crossroads of, okay, I can take what's not working here and I'm applying what I am seeing over here. And I'm not really going to necessarily, I'm going to do my best not to pay attention to these things, even though they're somewhat having to participate in some of these things, which is really unfortunate. I really feel for that. But they're smart. They're just so smart. And they're so naturally intuitive because their souls are much older, but that goes into a whole other spiritual realm and like what they say about, you know, kind of the times that we're living in and where we're heading for before the massive like shift. And so, you know, there's a lot of different religions have kind of what they call these times, all this stuff. Right. And so I think it's just a beautiful time. And they're very, very in tune. They naturally can feel like what would take previous generations, like therapy at 60 years old. These kids come in like automatically, like, yeah, no, I feel that. Like, I know that. They have these conversations. My 18-year-old nephew started having these conversations at like 5. It was so weird. It's like talking to an adult, like an adult. Like, how do you, like, what? Where does that come from? How do you know this? And it's interesting because they're not, in my opinion, they're not, some, not all, I get it. Some probably being disrespectful. Some are probably like being heavily influenced by the times. Some are probably like, you know, marching for the wrong causes, even though they think they're doing the right causes. I totally get it. But there's a lot that are so innately in tune with, I'm going to let them break everything down, but I'm going to build starting now. I'm not going to wait for the breakdown. I'm going to start building now. And I think those are the two worlds that are really happening.
Ooh,
and so, you know what I mean?
I like that. I like that there's like this attitude that you're kind of picking up on there, where they're not going to wait for the breakdown. They're just going to start creating now. It's like, I don't need you to wait for you to finish. I'm already starting. And I think that's key. I think that's so important, because just on a human level, on a personal level, there's so many things that we think we need to complete or finish, or like, until like the full healing's done here, then I'll be good enough to start over here. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. You just got to start now. You got to start making the changes. Everything else will work itself out. You'll know exactly what to do. And I love that. And I think, looking at some of the stuff that's even happening now, we just even look at the chanting that's going on, at college football games and things like that. I think that is a very, very interesting sign. Okay, when we talk about signs, that things are not what they seem, per se, how the media is projecting it all.
Right. We we're at a tipping point. We're definitely at a tipping point. And I will say this, dark is cocky and arrogant and greedy. That is why it loses. It always loses. When you're cocky and arrogant and greedy, more. And historically, 100% of the time when you do that, you slip. And so we're at a tipping point where they breached so many and intruded so many people on all sides now, especially last week, on all sides now, that there's really only thing left to go is something's not right. We already know this, but there's a lot of people who are like, something's not right. Okay, that officially might be of the tipping point, or that might be the tipping point. So I feel like we're very much there. And, for the same reasons that they are using media, right, against all of us, which is funny because they were originally losing from the internet. And then they started realizing like, oh, well, we'll use it against the people, eventually. They're always behind. They're always lagging, but we give them credit like they're always ahead, but they're not. That's not how innovation works. They're never early adopters. If they were, when the internet came out, no. Email, when email came out, no, we're going to still use mail. When social media came out, like, no one will ever use that, right? Blockchain, crypto, no, we'll never use that. Like, okay, like, got it. You're historically 100% wrong. Got it. Okay. So, because they have their own blocks. Cocky arrogance and greed will always get in the way, and it's never sustaining.
Yeah. Okay, right there. Let's talk about it before we end the show, because I think it's important. I don't want to miss it. The blockchain. Let's talk about blockchain and how it's going to change everything and why it's coming in, because there seems to be, what we're seeing right now in the world is there's no accountability. No one's being accountable for, like, for instance, media is not being held accountable for saying one thing, at one point in time and then completely contradicting it another time. And everyone's just supposed to go, like, you know what I'm saying? There's no accountability or follow through. However, with a blockchain system,
yes,
you can't escape that.
You can't fake authenticity. You can't copyright infringement. You can't trademark infringement. You can't skim off the top as a bank or, as a merchant service provider. Thank you for making that transaction that way. I'm going to take that money. Thank you. You can't manipulate a story, because once it's on there, it's solidified. It's minted on the blockchain. Blockchain is a technological and spiritual feat, in my opinion. We'll see where it all goes. But when I say technological and spiritual, the premise of the way it is made is that we've been living in Web 2.0. Web 2.0, as you guys all know, like, anybody ever maybe get their site hacked into, or maybe their Facebook login hacked in, or maybe a bank thing, or a credit card stolen, or they see somebody online that's not really authentic when they stole that person's work over there. That's Web 2.0, bank fees, right? Or banks saying hey, I'm going to I'm gonna borrow your money. You're gonna put your money in my bank because I didn't have it before. I'm gonna charge you a monthly fee for having your money in my account. I'm gonna also lend it out 100% of your money. You're gonna pay me to lend your money out so I can make money, and I might give you 0.01.5% on your own money, which I just made money from because I didn't have money. I had your money. You kidding me? Well,
Yes.
blockchain, that's basically the breaking down of the banking system if you guys need. Blockchain is a technological feat in where it says somewhere around anywhere in the universe, one node has to interact with another node. All these different independent nodes have to verify they don't know each other, have to verify or make a contract that this thing is the first time it exists. This patent, this trademark, this song was made by so-and-so. It's on the blockchain. All the files have been solidified. Nobody can replicate it. And so what begins to happen is that you no longer, and I'll give a really great example. Right now we live in a permission. So I have permissionless permission society, which is, okay, I will, I'm going to create an app. I'm going to put it in the Apple store, and Apple is going to give me the permission if I'm allowed to have my app in there. First, I have to, make sure that I am like worthy of being in their store. Then they might say, okay, you're worthy. We deem you worthy. By the way, we're going to take a percentage of every single transaction that you have. Here's what that percentage is. Sorry, you can't argue with us. Oh, and if we don't like you at any given time, we'll make sure to remove you right from the platform so you'll no longer have your income. How does that sound to you? Blockchain has a decentralized approach, which is, hey, you can make whatever you want on the blockchain, and you're hosting it right here. Pay your hosting fee. Good luck. You can interact directly with your consumer, and they can pay you directly through crypto, which you can turn into currency, fiat, right? Dollar. No middlemen, nobody deplatforming you, nobody censoring you, no algorithm saying, oh, I think I'll only give you this much visibility. No, if you have people who say, oh, I follow you on your app here, 100% of them will see it. So it changes it removes all of these. I know this is really, really technical. And so I'm trying to be really like cognizant of that, because it's like, it's weird. But like, if you think about it spiritually, what do we want? We want more connection. We want less intrusion. We want more sovereignty. We want more ability to build ourselves. We want less people, telling us what we can and cannot do, right? We want to take more accountability and responsibility. We want to make more money and be way more abundant than constantly everybody skimming off of us, the banks and the system and like the, insurances and like all these different things, right? We want that sovereignty. Blockchain solves for the sovereignty. And I know it's sometimes so technical and people don't always know like where to like, wiggle in to start like learning about it. And they hear Bitcoin and then they hear like the media say stuff like, oh, like it's, illegal activity or whatever. Media is supposed to say that. It's a break from the financial system that is basically they're purposely trying to keep you here, because if you have a bunch of abundant wealth, and your own control of your own stuff, for whatever spiritual, mental, emotional reasons that they wanted full control over you, goes away. And so you have to always ask yourself, if somebody's fighting very hard against something, at least ask yourself why. Why do you fight it so hard? Whether it's the jab, whether it's the crypto. They did it way back when it was email and the internet. That's a fad that'll go away. They did it with everything else, right? So like, why do people resist change? Always ask that. And why do they fight so hard against it? And so I like what blockchain is standing for. And again, sorry for my dog. So
oh gosh, yeah.
He has to go for a walk. No,
Yeah.
So that's all that really is. It's just it's just a break from its Web 3.0, where it just basically says, hey, look, you want to create an e-commerce store and deal directly with your audience? Great, you can do that. You want to make an NFT, a non-fungible token, where it's your art, your writing, your book, your music, your whatever you want to create, your digital art, anything, and people pay you directly without any middleman for it. Cool. And there's a record of it. Like, there's a record of your Louis Vuitton purse. It's solidified on the blockchain. It says, oh no, this is an actual transaction record. This is authentic, right? Like, it solves a lot of problems that we've been experiencing in a Web 2.0 physical world.
Yeah.
Right?
People taking things that aren't theirs
right.
can no longer do that.
Yeah.
Well, I personally have enjoyed this conversation with you so much. Like it's probably one of my more favorite ones I've done. And that's just because I think you have this gift of being able to break down some complex ideas into simple, like in a lot of simplicity, but also applying them to all of the day-to-day things that are going on in our world in a multitude of industries, and I think that's important because sometimes I think we can get caught up in our own little echo chamber, and I think it's important to be able to diversify and understand how it applies into all arenas. And I think you've done a great job of expressing that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. By the way, one of the people on here said blockchain is the key to voting in the near future. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, exactly. You can't lie. You can't lie. Oh, no, you already voted. I literally have you solidified on the blockchain. Sorry. No voter fraud.
No, I know.
Sorry, I had to throw that out there.
It's absolutely. Thanks, Dave. Suiterbug. So, okay, before we leave, one last message for the audience. Could you just, whatever you feel called to say right now to help inspire those to, do what they're being called to do and not to wait any longer?
You're not crazy. You're not crazy. It's really important to know that. Not everyone is going to understand what you feel internally. They can't. You're different. All of us are different. And when we start to have these feelings of wanting to do what we're called to do, it makes people who may not either yet be in there, or they may be having their calling, but they don't want to step out into it. It makes them nervous. It's a break from the norm. It's a break from the system. And so you're not crazy when you're feeling this internally, or you're having a conversation with God or your intuition or universe source. Like you're not crazy at all. And you have to practice. I think you have to practice, and I'm constantly doing this myself. Practice what you feel to be true, even if it's slightly different than the thing in front of you, right? And that goes for the relationship, maybe the temptation of like, ooh, this person really isn't for me, and I should really know that, and so I should go here. Ooh, this job kind of really isn't me. I'm really called to do this. Go for it. Like, your soul is basically like, just follow me and I'll make your life a lot easier. Just follow me. Like, this like resistance that you're having and these like problems and these outcomes that you keep getting that you don't like. Yeah, I know that. You should follow me instead, because I'm your blueprint. And isn't it great that you can just kind of follow your gut and get the outcomes that you do want, versus constantly being stuck from the brain trying to rationalize the thing that you don't want and that you still end up with it? So you're not crazy. You're tapped in. You're plugged in more than you think. And I think that you got to really practice that. It's not easy at first. It's still sometimes not easy, but I'm constantly like, ooh, I got to make this decision now. It's not really what I wanted, but I got to do it. So you're not crazy.
Well said. Well said. I love that. I think all of us need to hear that at some point, because you do start to question yourself, which is a normal thing. Okay. Thank you so much for being on the show, Matt. Please use this opportunity to plug everything you've got going on. Where can people find you? I've got all the links in the description, but please let everyone know what you got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. At Matt Gottesman, as you guys see my name on the screen, at Matt Gottesman on Insta. I answer every single text, DM, reply. Nicole will tell you it's how we connected online. Like, I literally answer all of them. The Hustle Sold Separately is my podcast. You can hear that on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Google Play, YouTube coming soon with this awesome person teaching me a lot here coming up. I write a Substack, it's like Medium, right? A Substack called Permissionless, right? And it's all about kind of all of this stuff that we're talking about in business and spirituality and our inner. It's very Naval Ravikant, which is one of my favorite multidisciplinary thinkers. mattgottesman.substack.com is where you can find that. MattGottesman.com. is also a place you can find me, although I'm redoing the site. So reach out to me anywhere. I answer as much as I can and as often as I can.
Amazing. Yeah. If you're on Instagram, please follow him. He's always dropping really great little bits of wisdom to kind of uplift your day, help you feel more aligned. So please give him a follow and definitely check out his podcast. Matt, thanks so much for being on the show. This was wonderful. And guys, thank you for hanging out with me tonight. Please share this episode with everyone you know. There's so much wisdom in here that many can benefit from. I love you guys so much, and I'll be back with you